"Can I mop or play for a meal?" They laughed at the janitor, until his fingers touched the piano. Marcus Washington had been invisible for so long, he sometimes wondered if he'd simply fade away entirely. At 62, his weathered hands bore the calluses of 1,000 mop handles, his back curved from decades of bending over dirty floors, and his eyes held the quiet dignity of a man who had learned to find worth in work that others dismissed. The morning sun filtered through the grand windows of the Meridian Hotel's lobby, casting golden rays across marble floors that Marcus had polished to perfection just hours before dawn. He pushed his cart through the opulent space, past leather armchairs that cost more than his monthly salary and crystal chandeliers that sparkled like frozen starlight. The hotel guests barely glanced his way to them. He was just part of the scenery, as unremarkable as the potted palms or the elevator music. But Marcus didn't mind. He'd grown accustomed to being overlooked, finding solace in the rhythm of his work and the quiet satisfaction of making things clean. That Tuesday started like any other. Marcus arrived at 4 a.m., collected his supplies, and began his rounds through the hotel's 30 floors. He hummed softly as he worked old gospel hymns his grandmother had sung, jazz standards from his youth, classical melodies that seemed to flow from some deep well within his soul. Music had always been his companion, even when everything else in life had fallen apart. By noon, exhaustion weighed heavy on his shoulders. He hadn't eaten since the day before, having spent his last $20 on medicine for his neighbor's sick child. Mrs. Rodriguez next door was a single mother struggling to make ends meet, and when little Sophia had come down with pneumonia, Marcus hadn't hesitated to help. Now his own stomach gnawed at him with sharp pangs of hunger. But payday wasn't until Friday. He was mopping the lobby floor when the afternoon crowd began to gather. A local radio station was hosting a charity event in the hotel's grand ballroom, raising money for homeless shelters across the city. Well-dressed patrons streamed through the lobby, their jewelry glittering, their laughter echoing off the marble walls. The smell of catered lunch wafted from the ballroom, making Marcus's empty stomach clench with need. During his break, he approached the event coordinator, a sharp-dressed woman with a clipboard and an air of harried importance. She barely looked up when he cleared his throat. "Excuse me, ma'am," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I was wondering, would it be possible for me to earn a plate of food? I could mop some extra areas, or maybe help clean up after the event." The woman glanced at him with undisguised annoyance. "We don't give handouts to staff," she snapped. "That's what your paycheck is for." "I understand, ma'am. I'm not asking for charity. I'm willing to work for it. Extra work, I mean." She sighed dramatically. "Look, we're busy here. Maybe ask your supervisor about advancing your pay or something." Marcus nodded quietly and turned away, his cheeks burning with shame. Behind him, he heard the woman muttering to her assistant about entitled employees and inappropriate requests. As he walked back toward his cart, he noticed a beautiful grand piano sitting in the corner of the lobby, positioned to provide ambient music for hotel guests. A small sign read, "Please enjoy our complimentary piano music daily, 2-4 p.m." But the scheduled pianist was nowhere to be seen. Marcus paused, his eyes drawn to the ebony and ivory keys that seemed to beckon to him. He glanced around the lobby, noting the cluster of charity event attendees near the ballroom entrance. A wild idea began to form in his mind, desperate, probably foolish, but he was past caring about dignity. He approached a group of well-dressed guests who were waiting for the ballroom doors to open. Their conversation stopped as he drew near, their expressions ranging from curious to mildly annoyed at the interruption. "Excuse me," Marcus said, his voice stronger now, though his hands trembled slightly. "I have a proposition. I'm willing to provide entertainment either by cleaning this entire lobby until it shines like new, or by playing piano for your enjoyment. All I ask in return is a meal from your event." The group exchanged glances, some smirking, others looking genuinely puzzled. A portly man in an expensive suit chuckled condescendingly. "You play piano?" He gestured toward Marcus's janitor uniform, his mop and bucket. What could a custodian possibly know about music? "Please," Marcus said simply. "Just give me a chance." More people had gathered now, Drawn by the spectacle of the hotel janitor making such an unusual request, someone pulled out a phone to record. The crowd's mood seemed to shift toward cruel amusement. Here was unexpected entertainment, a chance to watch someone embarrass himself for their enjoyment. "This should be good," whispered a woman in pearls, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Probably thinks he can bang out chopsticks or something." "Go ahead," called out the man in the expensive suit, gesturing grandly toward the piano. "Show us what you've got, maestro." The laughter rippled through the crowd as Marcus walked slowly toward the piano bench. His heart hammered against his ribs, but something deeper than fear propelled him forward. This wasn't just about a meal anymore. It was about every time he'd been invisible, every moment his humanity had been dismissed, every dream that others assumed he couldn't possibly possess. He sat down at the bench, his calloused fingers hovering over the keys. The crowd had grown larger now, hotel guests and charity attendees alike gathering to witness what they clearly expected to be a humiliating display. Phones were raised, ready to capture his failure for social media mockery. Marcus closed his eyes and let his fingers find their home on the keys. The first notes of Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major flowed from the piano like water finding its natural course. The melody was haunting, beautiful, filled with a longing that seemed to pour directly from his soul into the instrument. The laughter died instantly. The music filled the vast lobby, each note crystal clear and perfectly controlled. Marcus's fingers danced across the keys with the skill of someone who had spent decades perfecting his craft, who understood not just the technical aspects of playing but the emotional heart of the music itself. His body swayed slightly as he played, completely absorbed in the piece, transported to a place where titles and uniforms and social expectations simply didn't exist. As the nocturne concluded, silence stretched through the lobby like a held breath. Then Marcus transitioned seamlessly into a jazz interpretation of Autumn Leaves, his fingers finding complex harmonies and improvisational passages that revealed not just technical skill but deep musical intelligence and creativity. The crowd was transfixed. Phones that had been raised to mock now recorded in genuine amazement. The portly man who had laughed loudest stood with his mouth agape. The woman in pearls had tears streaming down her cheeks. When Marcus finally lifted his hands from the keys, the silence lasted for several heartbeats before erupting into thunderous applause. People were crying, calling out "Bravo!" and "Magnificent." The same individuals who had moments before been ready to mock him now looked ashamed, awed, transformed by what they had witnessed. The event coordinator who had earlier dismissed his request pushed through the crowd, her face flushed with embarrassment and something that might have been respect. "Sir," she said, her voice completely different now, "You're incredibly talented. I'm so sorry about earlier. Please, let us provide you with a meal." "Several meals, whatever you need." Marcus nodded graciously, but held up a gentle hand. "Just the one meal would be fine, thank you." That was our agreement. As the crowd began to disperse, many stopping to shake his hand or offer praise, a young girl approached with her mother. She couldn't have been more than 8, with wide eyes full of wonder. "Mister," she said in a small voice, "that was the most beautiful music I ever heard. How did you learn to play like that?" Marcus knelt down to her level, his eyes kind and patient. "Well, young lady, I've been playing since I was about your age. My grandmother taught me on an old upright piano in our apartment. Music has been my friend for a very long time." "But you're a janitor," the girl said, not with judgment but with genuine curiosity. "I am," Marcus smiled. "But that's just my job. It's not who I am. We're all much more than what we do for work. Remember that, okay?" Later, as Marcus sat in the hotel restaurant enjoying his meal, a kindness that had been extended not just to a single plate but to dining wherever he wished, whenever he wished, courtesy of the hotel management who had also learned of the incident, he reflected on the strange turns life could take. His phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Rodriguez. "Sophia is feeling much better. Thank you for everything. You're an angel." Marcus smiled, taking another bite of the best meal he'd had in months. Tomorrow he would return to his mop and bucket, to his quiet rounds through the hotel's 30 floors. But something had shifted today, not just in how others saw him, but in how he saw himself. The music had always been there, waiting patiently through decades of early mornings and aching backs, through financial struggles and moments of invisibility. Today it had reminded him and everyone who heard Ida that dignity, talent, and worth aren't determined by uniforms or job titles, but by the content of one's character and the gifts that lie within the human spirit. As he walked home that evening, Marcus hummed softly to himself, the same gospel hymns his grandmother had taught him all those years ago. He was still a janitor, still struggled to make ends meet, still lived in the same small apartment, but he was also, and had always been, so much more. In his pocket was a business card from the hotel's events manager, asking if he would consider providing piano music for special occasions. In his heart was the memory of a little girl's wonder and the knowledge that sometimes, when we're brave enough to share our gifts with the world, we discover that we've been valuable all along.